Hello, another episode of Natives Podcast. I'm Harry MacArthur. I'm here with Bob Thornton, and we're ready to kick off another exciting guest. We have Chet Tart here, and alias Dan McCoy, and a lot of other things I'm learning about him. I just met him for the first time. This is going to be all new to me, but I'm going to turn it over to Bob. Bob knows him well, so surprise.
All right, so Chet and I met in the early days of O'Donnell, and we had opened our very first showroom, and Chet used to come in, and we would talk for hours about anything and everything but radio, which Chet was doing, and Windows, which I was doing. We talked about spirituality, we talked about sharing life, and he was just this really cool guy representing this little tiny radio station. And we became friends, and eventually I started advertising with him. And the one story I'm going to start with is Chet said to me one day, "Would you mind coming by my house and giving me an estimate?" So he's working at this little tiny radio station. So I said, okay. So he gives me the address, and I punch it into GPS, and I don't think anything of it. And I'm driving down, and I'm going down south, and all of a sudden I'm on PGA Boulevard. And I'm kind of confused, and then I'm pulling into PGA golf course, and I'm going to this big house, and I'm thinking, how does this guy from this little radio station have a house in PGA National? And eventually I found out that Chet Tart is actually the true Dos Equis guy. And I'm hoping that you're comfortable enough to share. Let's start off at the beginning, talk about when you were a kid in school and family, and go from there.
You want to go all the way back that far?
You can give us the abridged version.
I grew up in New Jersey, and it was just a fun time and a different time to grow up, and I knew what I wanted to do in life. So I have to tell you some interesting stories. So I had a paper route, and the paper route was one of the things that fed me what I needed, the cash I needed to go. And what I needed was cash in order to get to New York City, because that's where I wanted to go all the time. And I'm telling you this from the career point of view, is that I would save enough money to take the bus to go to New York City. And I was about 14 or 15. And why I was going to New York City is because I wanted to get into broadcasting. So I'd save my money, take the bus, and go to the Tonight Show, go to the Merv Griffin Show, go to the Dick Cavett Show. And then I found out they do a rehearsal show on Sunday for Ed Sullivan. So I tell my parents, I said, I'm going to church, and then I'm going to hang out with some friends. And what I would do is go to St. Patrick's Cathedral. This is all by myself. Nobody wanted to come with me. Wow. And to go to St. Patrick's Cathedral, go to church, and then go over to the rehearsal for the Ed Sullivan Show, which was taped at 12 noon, just in case something happened at night. So that's where my mind was. And I was always thinking about, how do we make this a television show? How do we do that? And I would write stuff down. And that's really, but I had a lot of friends. I mean, your self-talk is very important. I had this terrible self-talk that, I was not liked or I wasn't popular. But as I go back and think about, I had 1 million friends, and I hung around with so many people. And when we go back to the class reunion, they go, "Oh, Chet's here. I'm glad you're here." And I go, I didn't like myself, but everyone else did. You know how you have that self-talk? I realize how important that is.
And you hit it right on the screws, as they say in golf. Working with young people, I tell them that over 80% of our self-talk is negative. And I wouldn't talk to a friend, I wouldn't talk to any of you three the way that I would talk to myself. Yeah. And yet we're supposed to be our own best friend first before we can be a friend to others. So you're absolutely right. You knew, how young were you when you very first started chasing the dream?
I would say 8 or 9.
Wow. Okay.
Because I would watch television and go, I want to do that. I had a goal over here, and there's 2 goals I had. And I've never told this to anybody except one other person, and it fell on the floor laughing. And I said, in my mind, I was either going to go to be a priest, to be the Pope. And I found out that you have to be Italian to be the Pope. So I didn't decide that because that's what, if you're going to go do something, be at the top.
Top.
Then I thought, someday I'd like to host the Tonight Show. And I thought about getting into broadcasting. And then I thought, well, Johnny Carson could stay there as long as he wants. So I'm going to go to L.A. eventually and become a game show host. So imagine me telling that to somebody, and they fell over on the you were going to be a game show host? I said, yes. But I got derailed. So I'll tell you how I got into the broadcast business. I was in high school. I was happy I grew up in New York City, outside of New York City, because I could actually go to the city. And eventually, I became bold enough not to get tickets for these shows. I would get dressed up and walked in, and because they saw me, and the security was very low back then, I could go watch the rehearsal of the Tonight Show, but just walking upstairs. 7th floor, 7A was over there. There was a guard there. I just waved to the person, and they saw me quite often, and I would sit in and watch the Tonight Show. Wow. I got to know the pages at the Ed Sullivan Show, so I wouldn't need tickets anymore to go to that. And I'd just go there, and they would give me a seat. Same with the Merv Griffin Show. So I go, yeah, I'm in. I tried so hard to be a page at NBC, but they wouldn't let me do it because I was going to college out of town. So a buddy of mine and I decided that we'd go to college together, and we were doing poorly in school. And we just hung around. I said, listen, I found this book at one of these places where you go to college. You open the book and it says, these people will accept you with these low marks. And I said, there's one in Miami. Let's go down to Miami. I said, let's get out of here and go in the sun. We can have a great time. So we both go down to Miami. We go to this college called Biscayne College, which doesn't exist anymore. It's now St. Thomas University. And I tell you, this is the wrong college. It turned out to be the right career move. So we're down at Biscayne. And I remember getting off the plane, and the students picked us up, and we're driving. It's August. I'm going, I've never been so hot in my life.
A little different than New York.
Oh, it's so hot. And they have the hood down on a convertible. And it's like baking on the way in there. And I go, holy mackerel. So we both get to the college. And they want to know what we're going to major in. And I go, I don't know. I'm 18 or 19 years old. And I go, what are you going to do, Bill? He goes, I'm going to major in accounting. I said, okay, I'll write that down too. So I'm there. In order to pay for the college, because my parents were poor, I had to clean the school at night. I was a janitor. And I also answered the phone with another guy who became famous, by the way. So we're all at the college. And I'm there about 30 days. It was like August, September. October 1st, one of the trustees are sitting in his office, and I'm cleaning the office. And he goes, Chet, you do a great job of cleaning this place up, and you're on time all the time. And he says, I'm very impressed. He says, what do you want to do for a living? I said, honestly, I would like to be host of the Tonight Show one day. And just said it like that. 18 years old. He goes, you want to be in broadcasting, right? I said, yes. He said, I'm going to get you a job down at a radio station in Miami, and it's going to be an intern job right away, and then after that, they'll probably give you a paid job. It's okay. And I was excited. Now, the school's in Opelika, so I had to take a bus from Ocala, which is not a very safe neighborhood, down into Miami on one of the islands. I forgot where. And the station was WIOD. And it's a talk station. So I get down there, I'm being interviewed, and he goes, okay, you could be a talk show. You could be a producer for this guy. He does a nighttime talk show. And back then, a producer, all he did was write the name of the person calling in on line 4. Mike wants to talk about X. And that's all I did. I'm there a week. The next week I come in, and I don't know the host because he's on the other side of the glass. And I'm on this side with the engineer. And he goes like this to me at the end of the show. My engineer goes, I think you're getting fired. I said, for what? He said, he's calling you into the studio. He's never called anyone into the studio. I said, oh, I just started here. So I walk in, and back then the studios were they were encased in double doors, soundproofing like you wouldn't believe. And when you walk in, it feels like you're walking into something that's so secure. And also back then, the talk show hosts were stars, and you weren't allowed to talk to them. So this guy calls me in, and he says, Chet, what do you want to do for a living? He said, because I like what you're doing. I go, oh. And, here's that question again. I said, I like to do what you're doing. He said, well, what are you doing here in Florida and Miami? I said, I'm going to Biscayne College. And he says, let's get out of here. I said, where should I go? He said, either Syracuse University or Emerson College in Boston. I said, sir, I never heard of either one of these schools. Could you pick them out for me? He said, okay, I can get you in Emerson. You can go there in January. I said, let's start next year, because I have a lot of friends and I'm in mine. Can we start next year? He said, okay, we'll get you in next year. And he said, I want you to keep in touch with me so I know how you're doing. And I said, okay. That talk show host's name was Larry King. So that's how I got into the business. So he got me into Emerson College that way. And but more things, that college produced more things happening later on in my life. So I went to Emerson College. It was a great school. It was phenomenal. Very competitive school, more than I ever been. Everyone wanted to be in the entertainment business, the speech therapy business, or the theater business. The teachers were unbelievable. I had Rod Serling for television production. I had Agnes Moorehead teach me how to speak, and she was Andorra on Bewitched, if you ever saw that show. We had Carol Channing come in, help us. Norman Lear was a graduate, so he would talk to us about the production of All in the Family at the time. And these are my teachers. So we had 12 weeks of education, 6 weeks of this Hollywood people coming in teaching us stuff, and then another 12 weeks. That's how this school was set up. It was just phenomenal time. Psychology class. There's a guy sitting next to me who just hardly was ever there. And he was always asking me to come see him do stand-up comedy. But the comedy was out of town, and I don't have a car. So I could never get to see him. So one day I said, I brought my car up, and I said, it's so expensive to have a car here in Boston. He said, oh, park it at my parents' house. It's in Brookline. I said, okay. He said, you just have to go out there, take the green line, and come back and take it and move it to either side of the street. All right. That guy's name was Jay Leno.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
So I went to school with him. I went to school with Stephen Wright. I went to school. There was another guy upstairs who wanted to be a writer in Hollywood. When I tell you these stories, what people say to me goes, what happened to you? The guy upstairs is a writer for Hollywood, and his name was Kevin Bright. And he wanted to be a writer, but I guess in the beginning, when you start out in Hollywood, it's tough. And he was living in his car for a while, and so he goes out to Hollywood, and one day I'm watching a TV show, and I see his name come up at the end of the TV show. I go, oh, Kevin got a job writing. Well, I don't think he has to work a day in his life anymore, because he was one of the beginning writers for a TV show called Friends.
Oh, my gosh.
So that's the kind of people that I went to school with.
Well, I mean, your first boss, so that we recap, was Larry King.
Yes, correct.
And if you're young and you don't know, Larry King was the king of radio. Yeah. I mean, he was in front of a microphone until he was how old?
I think 89 or something like that. He died.
Yeah, I mean, he was and that was your first boss. And every person that you mentioned was a complete rock star in their industry.
Correct, yeah.
So what happened to you?
That's exactly what people say.
You're a rock star.
But I enjoyed my career. I became a talk show host. Well, here's a funny story. I went to New Hampshire as my first job. And as soon as I get up there, oh, you're the program director. I don't know what a program director does for a radio station. So I'm there about a week, and I just want to be good. So I said, can I drive down to New York and talk to the program directors down there at the radio station to learn what I'm supposed to do? And my general manager was nice. Go down to New York. So I took the car from New Hampshire all the way down to New York, and I spent a day with the program directors. And I went to Hartford, and I went to New York City, and came back and said, I have all these ideas on how we're going to fix this radio station. And he says to me, we are going to be one of the main radio stations for the political campaign. It was 1974, and all the presidential candidates come to the radio station. And back then, radio was a little bit different. I did the morning show with music, and then he did the talk show from 9 to 10. Then we went back to music. And he would do all the talk shows. And all these candidates would come to the radio station. So I met them all. I mean, Ronald Reagan, you name it, they came there. But the interesting story I tell you is that one day he's sick, and he said, there's a presidential candidate coming to the station, and you have to do the talk show. I'm 21. I don't know anything about politics, and I don't care. So there's no internet, there's no USA Today to get your information from. There's nothing. You have to go to the library. I'm now looking up what are the 3 areas of what should I know about the government, what the president actually does. So I'm like in the library, and I have all these questions written down. And then next day, this guy comes in, and he's running for the president. He's a peanut farmer out of Georgia. And I'm asking him questions, and he's answering with one-word answers. And with those one-word answers, the phones are not ringing. And I'm hoping the phone rings so I don't have to ask him any more questions. So we go into a commercial break. And I must have asked dumb questions because he didn't answer them. Like, who do you plan to put into this cabinet seat? And I don't know what a cabinet seat is, but I'm just talking. I don't know yet. I don't know if I'm going to be president yet. So in the middle of the first commercial, I say to him, listen, Mr. Carter, I don't know what other questions they ask you, and we have 40 minutes left of the show. Could we go back to some of these questions, and can you expound upon other things besides yes and no, and I'm not sure? Let's do this together. He said, okay. So he helped out, and the phone started ringing, so that hour went by, and that was tough. And then someone said, did you tape that interview? And I said, yes. He says, where's the tape? I said, I erased it. The man will never be president. I said, he was the most difficult guy to talk to.
And kids, he did become president.
Yes, he did. So and then I moved to Indianapolis, and Indianapolis was a fun ride because being in the media, you're allowed to do more things than the normal person. So I was sitting on the floor for the Indianapolis Pacers because we were sports announcers, and I wasn't a sports announcer, but I was a broadcaster. We went to Cincinnati to watch the Reds, and I was able to sit in the broadcast box. And it was just a lot of fun. But the most interesting thing about Indianapolis was the Indianapolis 500. And I was able to go into the pits before the races and meet all the drivers and meet the cars. And I have pictures with me and A.J. Foyt and Mario Andretti and people like that. And I would do the interviews, and I bring them back to the radio station. And the day of the Indianapolis 500, I was on the air, and I had a reporter there, so I was able to do the reporting with the guy at the Indianapolis 500. And I still have that tape. I saved that one. It's on a cassette. By the way, I don't think people know what a cassette
Mr. Carter.
is. So I have that, and after the show was over, it was around 11 o'clock, and they go, Chet, you want to come down to the race? I said, sure. So I go down to the race, and the race had started, so there's no traffic, and I just pull in and park and walk right in. Didn't understand why they call it the Indianapolis 500. I sure know now, because every lap is counted. And if you don't get there on time, it's Indianapolis 300, because you are late. And then after that, Indianapolis, I moved to Tucson, Arizona, and I became the morning man there. My name was Dan McCoy, and it said The Real McCoy. Now, what happened there was interesting because we're talking about mindset. So my picture's on the billboards. I'm the number one guy in the city, and also I'm doing some weekend weather, and I'm an announcer for the Phil Donahue show out of Tucson because they voice it and they send it to Chicago. And then I'm dating the anchor from Channel 4. And we would go different places. And I go, why is everyone staring at us? He said, are you aware that your picture's on the billboard? Are you aware that you're dating me and I'm on television? Are you aware that you do weekend weather once in a while? I said, yes. He said, what do you think people, oh, look who's here. And I said, it just was a very strange feeling to me.
Because it was just your normal life.
Yes. And then I got a complex where, do they like me or do they like Dan McCoy? And it just kept going through my mind. This is a strange industry, very strange. So how I cleared it all up was I lived in an apartment complex where these two apartments were back to back, and in the middle was a grill. And that person in that place and this person here could share the grill and be in the backyard talking. So the guy across the way was Kevin. I'm 24 and he's 23. And we're out there grilling and we're just talking, and we just become friends. Never talk about anything, and once in a while we'll go out for a drink. And one day I'm going to work. I leave at 4 o'clock in the morning to do the morning show, and I am wearing jeans and a briefcase, and he's coming in from a wild party. So he said, Chet, where are you going? I said, I'm going to work. He says, what do you do, sell drugs? I said, no. He said, so what do you do? I said, Kevin, tonight when I get home, I'll tell you what I do. He says, okay. And he had that radio station on that I worked at all the time. It was the top radio station, and he had it blasting all the time. So I knew he was listening to the radio station. So that night we barbecue steaks. We're sitting out there talking. He goes, so Chet, what do you do for a living? I said, do you know that radio station you listen to, KRQ? He says, yeah. I said, I'm Dan McCoy. He said, no, you're not. I said, no, I am him. He said, it can't be, because you don't sound like him. You don't talk like him. I said, it's all an act. And I said, I'll bet you a steak dinner that I'm him. He said, how are we going to do that? I said, tomorrow morning, you come down to the radio station, because we're in Glass. It's called La Placida Village. It's a whole area in Tucson. And you tell me who's on the air in the morning. He said, okay, I'll do that. He came down, saw me, and flipped out.
I love it.
And that's when I knew that he was a friend for Chet, not for Dan, because that was a weird life. Now I'm in Tucson, and here's where Biscayne College comes into play again. I'm friends with the guy upstairs at the college in the dorm, and his girlfriend is now working in New York City for this major rep company called Blair Radio, and they're looking for somebody to be a consultant for radio stations. So she gives the head guy my name, then he comes out and interviews me. And I'm going, that wrong college got me Larry King and gets me a job in New York City. So that's how I got to New York City.
No kidding. The gift that kept on giving.
That's right, the wrong college.
Did you stay in touch with Larry over the years?
Yes, I did. I saw him at conventions and things like that.
I love it.
Then he got bigger and bigger. Larry King was just Larry King. And then he did the overnight show on Mutual Network. And then on CNN, I never saw him ever again. There was a time where I owned a radio station in California, in Monterey. And the AM station was carrying Larry King. And they were going to come and do a show at Pebble Beach. And I had to set up everything for him. And he comes down and he goes, I want to get this done and this done. And I said, Larry, I worked for you. You work for me now.
Good for you. Good for you. And for those of you that aren't 100 years old as we are, yes. AM was the king. FM really was, AM radio was, that was it. If you were the number one on AM, you were the number one in the country.
Yeah. You had it, and the morning show was the only show to do back then.
I think that's still kind of the case, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Because they know who you are, and you have an act, and they call it a shtick. Yeah. So that was fun to do. And then I bought the radio station in Monterey, and I had to do the morning show in that station until we found the morning guy. But I was the manager, the sales manager, and the morning guy. That's what happened.
Cook and chief bottle washer.
That's what happened, yeah. And it was a legendary station that we bought. Yeah, it was dead last. We turned it around into number 2 in the marketplace. It was called KMBY, and it was a fun time. We did a lot of bizarre things because I was like, we have to get attention. We have to get attention. One of the attentions was there was a guy running for mayor of Carmel named Clint Eastwood, and I wanted him to get on the radio station and talk about it. He just wouldn't. So one of the rock groups in town, which is local, wrote a song called Don't Mess with the Mayor. And we did all these parties for Clint Eastwood. He'd never show up, and he showed up at 1 because the song Don't Mess with the Mayor, we played it on the radio, and he showed up there was a Marriott, and he showed up for about 15 minutes and says, I hear you. And he was the mayor, so he had to do the lighting of the Christmas tree, and he had to do that. So we came down for that, too.
I love it.
So we found a way to get into Clint's life.
You always find a way. I've known you for a long time, and you always get it figured out. I remember at the radio station when you decided you were going to start on Thanksgiving playing only Christmas music.
Yeah.
And there was such an outcry at the station from people that you probably weren't aware of, but I got to hear it because I was going in and recording advertising. They were like, and those were the highest ratings.
They were.
People from every other station started listening to, so they could
The
hear
ratings went, December was an anomaly.
Yep.
Because people had Christmas music on, yeah.
Now, did you ever make it to Woodstock? Is there any story there?
Yes.
I'd like to hear that story.
It was the worst experience of my life. We were driving up to Woodstock, and our dad's car, and so a friend of mine took his dad's car because I wasn't taking mine, and we were driving up there, and I think it was a Friday afternoon, and traffic was just stopped, so we had to get out of the car, park the car somewhere, and didn't pay attention where the car was parked. We just got out, parked the car, and walked miles and miles till the sun went down, and the gates weren't open yet, and we just slept on the side of the road, and we had food, and I had one of those, you put drinks in, you have a...
Yeah, like a drink carrier?
Yeah, no, it was back in the 69 it was, so I don't know what you would call it, but it was like whatever that was invented, we had it. And then we had bags of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So we get to Woodstock in the morning, and we don't need tickets. We just got in because all the fences were knocked down. And we set up an area, put down, we're in the back, and we put down towels and stuff and sleeping bags and things like that. But the crowd was so packed. We were nowhere near the stage, and the bathrooms were miles over here. And I go, if I have to use the restroom, I don't know how to get back because the land was so big. And, at that age, everything is monstrous. So we were walking through, getting into our space, but I forgot to tell the story. Everyone's pushing to get in. By the time we got in, I had a handle, and none of what it was connected to was gone because of the pushing. It broke off. And the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches were smashed because everyone was pushing to get in. So I'm going, we're going to be here 3 days with no food. And they were selling food on the other side of the area. And I said, if we go get food, I don't know where we are. And it was a terrible experience. It was hotter than hot. People did not go to the bathroom where they're supposed to. Wherever they were, they went. And it smelled, and that wasn't me. And it was filthy dirty. And that night it rained. And then we left. We just packed up, and we left our sleeping bag there because it was disgusting. Everything we left there, and we just walked. And we walked back to the car, which I guess it took about 2 hours to find that car. And we went home. The first thing we did is on driving home is we sat outside of a Burger King to wait till it opened so we had something to eat.
Because you were so hungry.
We were so hungry.
Now, did you ever make it up to the stage while you were at Woodstock?
No.
No?
Never. We're lucky we made it inside.
Okay, just checking.
I just wanted to get out of there. The worst experience ever. And, at 17.
Yeah. Yeah. But you can say you were there.
Yeah, I can say it was there. Right.
One of my friends, a customer, Pat Eves, he was like 14 or so and lived, I don't know, say 20 miles from it. And they're calling around. They needed another Hammond organ. And he goes, well, we got one. And so they pulled up. And then they pull up and they get to the back of the stage, and then they put the organ up there and everything else. He said, we didn't know what was going on. We just loaned them the organ.
Yeah.
And then, here, we're getting it out of here. Other bands were pulling in. They got the heck out of there. And they said it was madness in and out.
It was. It was that.
But you're a kid, you don't know. You're just,
right.
It's my organ, you're using mine. He said, we should have kept that organ.
Yeah, probably would be worse, depending on who played on it, right?
Right, yeah.
Now, so the first radio station you purchased, was that a result of consulting for the company that hired you?
So Blair Radio hires me, and I'm traveling in every state in the union. I'm like going to every radio station that Blair represents and fixing them. And my job was to work on the talent, to work on the music, and work on the sales. So, and then I did all this. We designed our own research company so I could find out what the problems were and the keys. And I'm going, everyone's getting rich from all this stuff. I need to buy one of these. And this is another interesting story. You know, now I'm 31 years old, and I want to buy a radio station. Of course, everyone wants to buy a radio station. This is 1985. And I'm traveling on the road, and I met this guy, Chris. He's in Jackson. He said, and he goes, let's buy a radio station together. I said, well, why don't you come up to New Jersey where I am, and let's get to know each other before we just buy a station together. And we started getting along, and let's put a business plan together, which I didn't know what to do. So, and there's no AI at the time, so we had to go to the library again and find out how to do a business plan and a financial plan. And he's smarter than I am with the financial numbers. So I said, you do the financial part, I'll write the other part. And then what I thought I'd do, I said, I'm going to call some brokers and have them send me some proposals that other people put together, and we'll just copy that. So that's how I was able to get that done. And then we went all over New York to wealthy people talking about, you know, what we wanted to do by a radio station. We even went to the Trump Towers and talked to Donald Trump, who actually sent me a letter I saved and said he wasn't interested, but the letter had all gold on the top with his name on it. And it was like, oh, I'm saving this letter. And
he'll never be president.
That's right. These are lines you're going to remember forever,
yes,
right?
sir.
So he sent me, and then one day I'm in my office, and it was like July, and we had started looking for a radio station in January. This guy comes in. He's an Indian guy. So there's a guy out front who wants to talk to you, and he's from the W. Clement Stone Foundation. I said, okay, bring him in. And if you know anything about Clement Stone, he was the richest guy in Chicago. He also was partners at the time with Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich. And he also put Nixon in the White House because that's how much money he had during that time.
Whoa.
And one of his guys come in and he goes, W. Clement Stone would like to thank you for helping him. I said, what did I do? He said, about a year ago, he needed a voice for his positive motivational cassette series, and you gave him a voice and told him who to go after, and he wants to thank you. Can he do anything for you? I said, yes, I need to buy a radio station, and I need $1 million. Do you think he can help me? He said, well, I'll go back and ask him. So we went out to lunch. He goes back to Chicago. And about a week later, I got a call from not Clement Stone himself, from his office, and said he's not interested in getting a radio station. He's more interested in buying hospitals. He said, but his son may be interested, Norman Stone, who lives in San Francisco. Where is your radio station, by the way? I said, it's in Monterey. Oh, it's down the block from him, so why don't you connect with Norman Stone? I said, okay. So I called up Chris. I said, Chris, I think I got some money for us. I don't know how we're going to get it done, but you got to help me put this deal together. Chris lived in Savannah at the time, and I'm in New York City. So I get a call from Norman Stone himself, and he said, this is Thursday. Back then, you could fly anywhere quickly with no TSA and anything else. He said, can you be here in San Francisco for lunch Saturday? I'll have my accountant and lawyer with me. I said, okay. I said, Chris, what are you doing Saturday? I said, we have to have this done, and we have to be at lunch in San Francisco Saturday at noon. It's Thursday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we get our plane ticket. He leaves out of Atlanta at 6. I leave out of Newark at 6. And we both meet in San Francisco within 5 minutes of each other. We get there at 11:30, and we go to Norman Stone's house. Now, I don't know what you know about San Francisco. I did not know anything about it, but he lives in the Pacific Palisades. Do you know what that is?
I do. I actually lived in San Francisco for a couple of years.
You sit on top of a mountain and you see everything. Everything. We get to his house, and we go inside, and we have a great discussion. And I think we're there 2 hours. And then when I look back at it, I go, what idiots we were. 2 kids, and we had this proposal that is probably this thin. And then we leave, and he says, let me look this over, and I'll get back to you. And I hate that term, get back. I said, are we missing something? He says, no, we'll go out to dinner. And we had a red eye back. So we took the red eye back. And I didn't hear from him for a week. I get a call from Norman Stone, and he says, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to release $300,000 to you to start the process, and then we'll talk about the radio station. But he says, the money's not important to me. I'm investing in you. And now I'm sweating. And he said, not your partner, you. I'm investing in you.
Wow.
And I'm expecting you to do what you said you're going to do. Okay. Meantime, the broker had been talking to the seller of this radio station, and we've been trying to stretch this out because we were supposed to close in October. It's now October 15th, and I can't close because the money's not released to me, and we don't have all our documents together. My lawyer, I don't know how I found him. Somebody gave me in New York, and he says, don't worry, I'll screw this up so it lasts longer. So he would screw up the paperwork and make sure that he wasn't available for 2 weeks so that we couldn't close on the 30th of October. We actually closed on the 15th of December. But without him, we would have never closed. I would have lost it. But he would, and that happened with our adoption of our daughters, too. I'll tell you that one. Leah Panetto helped me with my daughter. That's another story.
Oh, wow.
So we get the radio station in December. We close on the radio station, and it's just, in my mind, everything has to be getting attention. You just got to get attention. And the station went from last place, it was really bad, all the way up to first place. But the story I tell everybody is watch out who you partner with, because that was a mistake. My partner was, and that's where Norman Stone, when I'd go up to him and I say, here's what's going on with Chris, he said, I invested in you, you take care of it. And I had to throw my partner out. And that was very difficult because he owned a percentage of the operation. His father-in-law owned put money into the station. That was a tough time. But it was a learning experience. I call it the $1 million learning experience. We bought the station for $900,000. We sold it for $3.8 million, and I walked away with all the lawsuits and everything else with about $70,000.
Wow.
So we all pay for our education just in different ways.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So, and Monterey was the first city that we adopted our first child in. And that was adoption is unbelievable. It's, we found out that I was sterile. It wasn't her, it was me. And I said, we should adopt. And I kept thinking, I don't know if I want adoption. I said, it's like renting a child. I said, because it didn't come from us. And she said, Chet, let's just do this. So there's a law firm in San Francisco that helped us and went through the whole process. You have to write letters. You have to get pictures together. You have to send them to certain people. You have a whole list of things back then. There's no internet and anything else. Mm-hmm. And each night I would print off 50 letters. We signed them all, stamped on every one of them, and send them out to different organizations that we were looking for a child. And finally, I'm sitting on Saturday and the phone rings, and a woman calls and says, I'm looking through the resumes and I want to give you my child. I don't know what to say. I mean, you're doing this and then someone calls you like a sale. Oh, we'll buy from you. What? So we flew her out because she had to come and live with us, but it was not a good situation. And finally, she has the baby. We sent her back to Kentucky because she was in Kentucky, and the baby's born 2 months early. And again, we had such great people I don't know what, God is so good because he's just taking care of us. So we get the child, and my wife flies out to Kentucky, and she's born 2 months, so she has to be in an incubator. And because she's born in Kentucky and we're in California, they have this thing called the compact adoption, where California and Kentucky have to agree on the adoption. You just don't adopt a child. And if she was born in California, it'd be a lot easier. But because she was born in Kentucky, California has to get involved, and Kentucky has to get involved. So California approves the adoption, but Kentucky's like doing nothing. And time is ticking. You have to get the baby out and bring us home, but you can't get it out of the hospital until Kentucky agrees to this. In Kentucky, I would call the office in Kentucky. We're getting to it. They're just like, tomorrow, we'll get to it. And
They must have had your attorney working on that.
That's right. So I finally call up Leon Panetta. Because he's our attorney general in California. I said, I need some help. So I call his office. I actually get to talk to him. And I said, we'll handle it tomorrow. And the next day, Kentucky approved, and we were able to take our daughter home. We get on TWA, and they see we have a newborn baby. And they said, what's going on? I said, we just adopted this child from Kentucky. Oh, you're in first class. So they put us in first class in TWA and flew us back.
That's nice.
So that's the tenacity of that story.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And she's 38 years old today. Woo! And she lives in Orlando.
Close.
There's so many stories about her and how she found we found her birth parents. You want to hear that story?
Yes.
So she didn't want to know anything about her birth parents, and it's high school graduation, maybe 6 months before, and she said, Dad, you know what I'm thinking for my graduation present? I said, what? I'd like to know who my birth parents are. I said, really? Now I'm like crushed. Really? I said, yes. I said, okay. So I go, I don't know how to do this. So I called a friend of mine. I said, how would I find your birth parents? He goes, well, there's private detectives. It's going to cost you money, but the private detective can find the birth parents. I said, okay. They're probably in Kentucky somewhere because that's where we adopt. That's where the family is and everything else. So I find this private detective. I give him $200, which is a lot of money, and I forgot what year it was. And he's on his computer. He says, oh, I found her because I had the Social Security number. Once you have that, because all the adoption papers and the hospital papers are in there and the name and everything else. Oh, she is remarried. And she also has a son by the person he married with. So Elizabeth now has a half-brother. I said, oh, okay. I have her cell number if you want it. I said, oh, give me the cell number. And by the way, where do they live? Port Orange, Florida.
No way.
What? So, and here's how much money they knew everything. Here's the car they drive, and here's her cell phone. So I come home. Elizabeth goes, did you find my birth mother? I said, yes. I said, here's her cell number. You want to call her? Elizabeth freaks. So my other daughter, who's also adopted, said, no, I'll call. I'll call for you, Elizabeth. Picks up the phone, and I'm listening to this conversation, landlines, and says, I'd like to talk to, I forgot her name. Hold on one second. And said, her name is Denise. I'd like to talk to Denise. Denise gets on the phone, and Caroline says, did you give up a daughter for adoption?
Very subtle.
She goes, yes.
Straight.
Well, I'm her sister, and would you like to talk to her? And they said, yes. She gives the phone over to Elizabeth, who's still freaking out. And she goes in the room, closes the door. They talked for an hour.
Wow.
And we invited them down for her graduation. The husband, we became great friends with them, by the way. Invited them down for the graduation, and on the way down, her stepbrother is going down and said, "We're going down." Doesn't say a word to him. He goes, "We're going down to a high school graduation," and he's like 2 years younger than Elizabeth, in West Palm Beach, and it's for a girl. And he goes, "Oh, great!" and he said, well, it's not what you think. What do you mean? It's your stepsister. What? Because they never said anything. And it was a great reunion. It really was.
That's awesome.
So next week is Elizabeth's child's third birthday. And everyone's coming. His family, the husband's family, our family, and the adopted family.
I love it.
Oh, so
and that's
good.
what happened at the wedding. You know, we're at the wedding when she gets married, and it's set up in three. And so my family goes, "Who are these people?" I said, "Oh, that's Denise. That's the birth mother family, because we became friends with them, and their relatives came, and the husband's relatives, and my family, and it was hilarious. But we're just one big happy family now."
I love that. And yet all your self-talk was negative.
Oh yes, it's
right?
growing up.
Why people didn't like you and you didn't have friends, and there you are bringing all these people together. That's awesome.
And in high school, I still have I have best friends that we talk about every couple of weeks. They call me and I call them. I have one from Biscayne College, I have one from high school, and I have one from Emerson. And we talk. I would say we've talked every 2 weeks or written letters to each other when we didn't have cell phones, since I'm 12 years old and 18 years old and things like that. And I'm still in touch with them. Talked about everything.
Now, you had a lot of people that saw something in you that you were able to mentor, or they were able to mentor you, and they were able to kick open doors for you. I know a few people that you've been able to help. And there's one radio station, one radio group that has done very well. And I'm not sure who helped them get their start. Do you know who that was?
I don't know about a start, but I came here in 1995 to work for Fairbanks Communications, and they had a station called WRMF. And we had 3 radio stations, WRMF, WJNO, and another one called RLX. And I became the manager of that radio station. And that was a great time and a wild time because WRMF was the top station, still is the top station, it was a killer radio station. And JNO was just high in the ratings also. But I don't know how long you've been in the area, but there was 2 talk show hosts that were tough to deal with. When you're the manager, you're sort of a psychologist too. I had to deal with Randy Rhodes, who did a talk show, and Jack Cole. And they did not like each other. Yep. And so I had to deal with that conflict inside the station. Do you remember those?
And Jack was very much his. It was all about Jack.
That's correct.
And Jack was Jack, and he wasn't. It wasn't. And he'd turn your head to right. Jack would just tell you, go to hell in a minute.
That's right.
He was.
There was many high-profile business people that would walk out of that studio because they didn't like the way he was being interviewed and come into my office. And I think I was so young then, but I had to manage all these people, and it was a wild time. And then the radio stations were spun off and sold, and I worked for Clear Channel for a while. And after that, I put together the Business Talk Radio Network, and that was syndicated on 300 radio stations, and I was the president of that. And I wanted to make it CNBC for the radio, but it was tough. But during that time, I was connected with a guy named Dave Ramsey, who was starting his radio career, and I was helping him get to other radio stations, and I became somewhat friends with him as he grew. And I remember going to his office in Nashville, and on the wall he had his goals written up there. He wanted to write a book, which he didn't write one yet. And that when he wrote that book, he was going to be on Oprah. And it turned out he wrote the book, Entree Leadership, and he was on Oprah. These are the influenced people in my life that I met.
And he's made it pretty. I think even young Seth knows who that is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Still to this day.
And I became friends with some of his staff, and I'm still friends with some of the people that still work for him. Ken Coleman still does his talk show, and I have all their cell numbers in here, so I can talk to them anytime and text them anytime.
I gotcha. And how about KVJ?
KVJ I met when they moved from Miami back to West Palm Beach, and Kevin reached out to me. And we just become friends, and with all 3 of them, and we talk a lot about growth, how to get better, what we're talking about. We just talk business all the time, and I see him every Sunday because we go to church together.
Yeah, and my wife loves the KVJ show, and Kevin is her favorite. And Chet called me one day, and he said, hey, Kevin and I are going to be speaking to this women's group down in Palm Beach, and I'd love you to come in and listen. And they're doing a motivational talk, and I was all excited. And I said, oh, Kevin from KVJ? And he said, yeah. And I said, oh, my gosh, Amy loves him. And Chet said, well, bring her down, and don't tell her. Just say that I invited her. I want her to hear me speak. And Amy gets very starstruck, which is awesome. We had a guy, Sid's Furniture, years ago, and Sid was on TV, and he had the slick back hair and the cheap suit. He sold furniture. Sorry, Sid, if you're out there, but and he used to say, "At Sid's, we don't mark it up to mark it down. Shop Sid's and compare. You'll like what you see." And we were out to dinner one night, early on dating, and Sid walked in, and I knew him. And Amy grabs me and she goes, "Oh my gosh, that's Sid." And I said, "Do you know him?" She says, "He's on TV." And I said, "It's paid advertising." She was beside herself, and Sid came over and we talked, and she didn't say a word. So I said, "Just so you know, Chet, she gets starstruck." And he said, "Well, don't tell her anything. Come down early and I'll have Kevin walk in." So we're down waiting in this room that we're going to have this talk, and Amy's there talking to Chet, and she's all excited being Amy, and her arms are going, and she's kicking it, and all of a sudden, this guy comes walking in, and she's talking to Chet, and she looks over Chet's shoulder, and she goes white. She goes, "Oh my God, that's Kevin from the KVJ show," and he walks right up and gives her a hug, and she still talks about it all these years later to this day. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And he got a big kick out of it.
Yeah, I do that with a lot of people I know. I don't know if you ever heard of Scott Shannon, but Scott was a big disc jockey in New York City and famous. And you know Scott? I said, yeah. I said, so one day we're in the car. I said, "Scott, you got to call my brother and another friend of mine, and just let's talk to them on the phone." He said, "Okay." So we're driving. I said, "Hey, Bob," that's my brother. I said, "How you doing? I got Scott in the car." "Scott Shannon?" I said, "Yes." "Go ahead, talk to each other."
That's great. And I know so many times, and I follow you on Instagram, and somebody will come to town, someone famous, and lo and behold, there's a picture of Chet and this person or persons out doing something together. So you really, I always tell people, they say, "Well, who's Chet?" And I said, he is truly the Dos Equis guy. And it's worked out well for you.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, meeting incredible people. You're talking about successes and failures and what you've learned in life. I'm going to share this with you because someone said I should put this together in a book. It's called Postcards for the Kids. And what it was, when I worked in New York City and traveled and when I worked for the Business Talk Radio Network, I had to travel everywhere for the speakers, and we were down, and I wanted to build a studio in Wall Street. And so I'd travel a lot, and I had 2 young kids, and what I would do is write on a postcard where I was and something that I failed in life and something I was successful in life, and mail them from the cities I was at, St. Louis, New York, places like that, and they would save the cards. And then when we got emails, I used to email them stuff. I said, "I just want you to know that this is one of the things that I made a mistake in. Stay away from this. And here's the success that I did. Do more of this." And I did that for both of them.
So good.
I love that.
That's priceless.
Well, especially because you shared your highlight reel, your success, but you also shared your low light reel.
Yeah.
Ups and downs.
And, many, many people, we all have that low light reel, but they're not willing to share it. And it's those failures that
you learn from.
That we learn from, and it gives us our successes. And if you're afraid to fail, you're never going to be successful. How many failures have you had?
Let's start with the major one for $1 million at a radio station.
Right.
And I always say that, hey, be careful of who you hang with. Be careful of the people that you surround yourself with. Be careful of the people you're in business with. I was young and I go, "Oh, I like this guy. Let's just do it." You just don't know the character.
It's been there, done that. Harry?
Yep. Oh. Yep.
The other thing that the part of that story is that as we got older, both of us, he called and he also said he was sorry.
Wow.
And we became friends again. Wow. Well, we'll never do business again because
No.
he was buying stuff and he said, "You want to invest?" I said, "Chris, I can't do it.
No.
I'll be your friend and we'll have a good time," because that's what we did. What we did best was play, not invest in business with each other.
What is it? Burn me once, shame on you. Burn me twice, shame on me. Right?
for your first job with Larry King, you know what, he changed so many lives, and I just, you know, seeing him grow like that, did that help you just always go for more? You know what, who was the guy that made you want to climb as hard as anybody, is what I'm saying. I mean,
Everyone that I met,
or was it just you? It was
everyone
yours.
I met that was better than me, I always look at it this way. They're human. They're just like
Yep,
me.
just like you.
Why am I not there?
You're right.
And I teach that all the
Exactly.
time with everybody.
Yep.
Why am I not there?
You know, I can do the same job. I can do it, you know. I get the same, you know.
And who do I know that I should? Who don't I know that I should know? I keep
Yeah.
thinking about that. And when you start connecting with people and you find it easy to connect with people, you start doing more and more of it because this works, this works, this works, this works. In 1990, before you could check up on people on the internet, I would read all these success books. And I don't know how I got it in my head. I said, you know, I'm in a radio station. I can interview all these authors, and they would never know if I put it on the air or not. So what I did is I called up all the authors or their people who represented them and said, hey, this is a new book out. I'll give you an example. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Stephen Covey wrote it. I said, I want to interview him for the radio since he has a book out. Okay, we'll set it up for you. Now, I have a music station. Well, I'm not putting them on the air, but it was for me.
Yep.
So I would put a cassette in, record it, and then I would have a conversation with him. And the questions were all about what I needed more than what anyone else's needed. Wow. I can't remember half these conversations, but I do remember this one thing he said that just hit me between the eyes. So at the end of the conversation, I said, you know, I want to make sure that I'm doing a good job as a manager, and I want to make sure that that I'm really good encouraging and inspiring my staff. And he says, well, let me tell you this, Chet. Think of your staff as plants. Really? He said, when you have a plant that lives, you put it in the sun, you take it out of the sun, you water it, and you feed it, right? If you put the plant in a dark corner and don't pay attention to it, what happens to that plant? Oh. And that's how he left the conversation. But I remember that more than all the other things that he was talking about. That was Stephen Covey when he
That's good stuff. Wow.
How many? I see a lot of pictures of you and your grandchildren.
Yes.
How many grandchildren do you have?
I have 4.
And you get to spend plenty of time with them.
I spend plenty of time with them. In fact, we're reading Think and Grow Rich with them also. And they're asking me, Pop, what does burning desire actually mean? What is this? And I'm also teaching them about budgeting. I'm also teaching about investing because I'm talking about the mistakes I made. When I bought these radio stations, my mindset was I know about the radio, I know about the sales, I know about everything. Never thought about the real estate. Never thought about the towers and how important they were. Never thought about that. I thought about the radio station. So I rented tower space, I rented this, and I rented that. There was the return on the investment was these hard. I didn't know that. So I'll talk to them about it, and I say, if I had owned the building the radio station was in at the time, whether they knocked the building or down, the land was valuable, especially in California. The other thing is the tower. I mean, you can make money by having it stick and everyone else rents from you, and there's no employees except 1 or 2 on that. I'll tell you the big mistake. So I'm driving up to the antenna one day because we had a 3,000 watt station, and I thought it was it was called Class A. When I bought it, I go, wow, we got a Class A station. Well, in radio, Class C station is the most powerful. Class A is the worst. I did not know that.
Paying for that education.
Oops. Class C is 100,000 watts, and mine was 3.
Okay.
3,000 watts. Your hairdryer had more power. So it didn't go very far, and your ratings are based on what you cover. So I'm driving up to the tower, and I was always making sure that where I'm a little illegal pushing that power because I want it, and California has mountains. So the FM goes right to the ground, and if there's a mountain there, it stops. where AM is shot to the sky, and you could hear me in Hawaii from where I was. So I'm up there, and they're putting these giant white things up there, these big. I said, "What are you guys doing up here?" He said, "Well, we're putting this cell towers up here because the cell phones are coming in, and these bag phones, you'll be able to talk on the phone. And by the way, we have no one who has the license for this." I said, "Oh, what is it?" He says, "It's $100,000, and you would own all the cell coverage from Carmel, Pebble Beach, straight up to Santa Cruz
For $100,000.
for $100,000." And I said, "Psst, I don't know who's going to be using cell phones because they're terrible."
Missed it by that much.
Yes. So I missed that one. And I missed another one. You want to hear the other?
Absolutely.
Love it, yeah.
So I'm
Please.
in Kansas, and a friend of mine says, "Have you noticed these magazines where people go around and buy their stories and you send them out?" He said, "There's a trucker who's making money on these magazines where he goes around interviewing truckers, and they put them in the magazine, they send them all out, and they think that it's an article about them, but you pay for it." He said, "Why don't we do this for the radio station advertisers?" I said, "Okay, great, let's do that." He said, "Do you want to invest in it?" And I said, "I don't think so. It's a lot of work because it takes me off my focus of selling airtime to print. So I would have special people helping me sell the print. Now, I would come to you and said, 'Hey, O'Donnell Impact Windows, I'm going to give you a 2-page spread. Here's how much it costs, and we'll do a story about it so it's not an ad.' And most people read stories rather than they bypass ads." So he started doing that, and he said to me, "This is working really well, and my bottom line is starting to show." And he said, "What do you think about taking it to other radio stations?" I said, "I'll give you some names of some people who may be interested, but most of them will not be interested because of their mentality." So I gave him 3 or 4 people, and they took it up. And I said, "Why don't you come to the NAB with me, the National Association of Broadcasters, and get a booth?" And he said, you want to do this with me?" And I said, "No, because I have a radio station I'm focusing on." He sold that for $4 million to a radio broadcasting company, and I didn't get that either.
Oops.
Sometimes we can't see that forest for
I
those
couldn't see
trees,
it.
right?
I'm so focused on what.
I could definitely jump into that pool. I've done it so many times. I've helped people, and I'm like, I don't think there's that big of a market, but I'll give you a hand, and then you stand back and go,
The real estate, I should own the real estate. I should have owned the towers because they were available.
But the great thing is you've taken that experience, that tuition that you've paid, and you're teaching your grandchildren.
That's right, I am.
And I can tell you from working with young people that they're not being taught that. They're not being taught very much about anything. So you're giving them a huge advantage going in. And my dad was an incredible tool and die maker. He was a horrible businessman. If you tried to even mention business to him, his eyes glazed over, he punched out. His physical body was still sitting in the chair, but he was nowhere to be found. So there was I paid for my business education over and over and over again. And I still will have people contact me, and they're like, "Do you know I'm a multi-millionaire because of the things that you helped me with?" And I'm like, "Don't." I should have listened to me.
Right. In my Vistage group, I had 2 or 3 people who were struggling with their business. And the group comes together. There's 12 or 14 CEOs in this group, and they are either managers or owners of the business. And one of our roofing guys thought he was doing well. He's doing $18 million a year, but he was losing about $1.5 million, and he was in debt because of the way he operated the business. And it's just amazing to me after, we call them little tiger groups, where 3 or 4 people come and help each other. And that's what we do in Vistage, we help each other grow. Last year, they thought he was going to go out of business. This year, he's already profitable. He's doing $22 million, but in the bank he has $1 million. He's paying down all his debt. And next year, they think he'll be very profitable in what he's doing. And it's And overall, I was telling Bob at breakfast this morning, the group didn't know their numbers. They didn't pay attention to budgeting. People go in business like I did. I love roofing, so I know roofing. I love construction. I'll go into construction, but they don't pay attention to all the people, the infrastructures, the process. And now that they're doing that, they've all increased. We have about a 38 to 39% increase last year from 2024 to 2025, total with the group growth. You know, that just makes me cry when I see these group of people growing like that. It's so important to take care of people. When I was running the radio station, I had this, I don't know where this idea came from, but if you were an employee in 1995 and 98, you got this check like this, and on the bottom there was this white piece. Do you remember that?
Uh-huh.
And it was like a waste. It's like all it did is repeat what was on the check, and I go, why are we getting this white piece? So I had the idea, if you do something outstanding that you think I didn't see, I'm going to write a note on the bottom of that piece of paper. So I'd write something about what you did, and thank you very much. But I didn't put it on everyone's check. You had to do something outstanding. So I started hearing people talking about my notes. And I noticed more and more people, the culture's changed. More and more people were doing things that were outstanding, but they wanted to let me know about it. And if you didn't do something outstanding, I didn't write anything on it because you did your job. So they would stand in the doorway sometime and they say, Chet, am I getting fired? I said, no, why? He said, well, you didn't write anything on my check. I said, it's not for normalcy. It's for something that you did so outstanding that brought us to another level that I noticed. Or you may think I didn't notice, but I did. Oh. Well, here's where the story hits me in the heart. 3 years later, I'm buying the radio station. I have my investors down. It's now the station's $70 million. And so I can't do it alone. I can't get one investor. I have a board of directors and I have VCs. And
venture capitalists.
Yeah, we are interviewing people who want to work with me again, plus new people. They would come in and laminated on pieces of paper was my notes.
No.
And they carried it around for them for years.
Wow.
I mean, that just brought tears to my eyes. Let me show you what Chet thought of me. And they would turn this page. Here's their resume. Here's a story. But look at these notes that Chet left me. And 2 or 3 people had them laminated.
That's so cool.
It also tells me that we're starved for affection. Starving. And to save something that I wrote, small little thing. Hey, what you did yesterday, I noticed, and it helped us go from here to here, and it also made John's life better. And that's what I write.
That's incredible. And you are absolutely, we've said it on this podcast so many times that they are absolutely starving. They're so hungry for it, and they're so little that from a species that has the ability to communicate at the highest level, we elect to pass each other, stand next to each other, and never ever say a word. So just those little written words that you
powerful.
Yep. That they would laminate them and keep them.
So it taught me a lesson, and I still do handwritten thank you letters to people. I text people like I know one of my business members is going to see his dad because he's not doing well and lives in Montana. On the way here, I text him and I said, and I talk in the car, I don't text. I said, hey, have a safe trip to see your dad. My thoughts and prayers are with you. And I do things like that. Another friend of mine is going to New York because one of the anchors he worked with on Channel 7 in New York died, and he's going back to see him. And I said, have a safe trip back. It'd be good to get seeing your friends again at Channel 7, but it's a terrible way to go back and get a reunion. And he thanked me for that. So I try to do something every single day.
Well, it is. It's those little touches that keep us spinning. And I know you both remember this, but there used to be a variety show, Ed Sullivan.
Yep.
And I was there.
And of course you were.
You know that Sunday church.
And the amazing thing was they used to have this guy, and I was just a kid, but they had this guy on multiple times, and he would put a stick on the stage, and he would start spinning a plate on the stick, and then another and another. And he would have, from centrifugal force, all these sticks would stand as long as that plate was spinning. And that plate would stay right on top of that stick, right in the center, as long as it was spinning. And it was just him running around with a little touch that helped keep that plate spinning. And your little touch kept a lot of people's plates spinning, kept them from crashing down. Just that one little human kindness.
Yes.
That one little, hey, how you doing? Are you okay? Hey, I'm thinking of you. Bad way, sad to go home that way. Great to see your friends praying for you, thinking of you. Keep those plates spinning, man.
Mm-hmm.
Keep making those touches.
Too important. We have to. We all have to do better. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share? Anything you want to leave for your kids and your grandkids? Anything you want to tell us or sum up?
For the grandkids, I talk to them every day about different aspects of life. I talk about kindness. I talked about, love. I'm really teaching them about communicating with difficult people and how to handle that stuff. And, I coach a lot of businesses, and I noticed people go into their career knowing their skills, but it's the attitude and it's the understanding to communicate with other people that's lacking in most of these businesses. And that's what I'm really teaching them and training them, and self-talk. As I said, we go, like you said, we start the morning with such negative self-talk. Mm-hmm. Every one of my Vistage meetings, I start with an affirmation. I ask them if this is resonating with them. We pray before we start our meetings, and it's all about growth. And I said, my mission is to make sure that you guys grow, and our mission is to help each other. You have to add value to other people's lives, so everyone in this room has to add value to other people's lives. And that's how we start all our meetings, so we know where we're focused.
And I have had the privilege of having been in company with you as you've gone in front of several companies, several groups, and man, you get it done. Your education paid off.
Financially too, right?
Yeah, it just took time. That's all. Some of us are maybe not as quick as others. It takes us longer to learn.
Yeah.
And I stand right with you, shoulder to shoulder. So.
Well, thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
Oh, no.
I hope this was helpful.
Oh, yes. Now, from Biscayne College, did you ever dream you'd be living back in Florida?
No, I did not. I did not.
Was probably the farthest thing from your mind, and then you came full circle 100 miles away from where it started.
Yes, and so some of my college friends visit me and let's go drive down to Biscayne. I said, it's not called Biscayne anymore. It's St. Thomas, and it's high security. We tried to get in, and we had to explain everything. And finally, I said, we're old guys. We're not doing anything. We just want to see what and some of the buildings are exactly the same.
Are they? Wow.
But the bar is probably a lot higher than it was when you could take.
I was there in 70 and 71. And on the campus was Don Shula and the Dolphins. So we would eat with them in the cafeteria, and we met them. But do you know what happened in 71 with the Dolphins?
Yes.
They won every game.
Every game.
Just like they did in Indiana. That was another amazing deal. With Curtis, the coach there, and what he did, it turned around Indiana football.
Well, the Dolphins at that time, you could join the MacArthur Milk Club, and you would get $3 tickets to a Dolphin game.
Really?
Yeah, we would ride down a little Volkswagen Bug, and you'd sit there and you'd drive in. One of the Cubans, you could drive around the back of the house and then park on the side for cheaper. I can't remember what it was, like $3, and then you would have to wait for everybody else to leave in front of you. But it was the cheapest way to get to a game, so you'd sit there and so.
Back then, life was easier.
Yes.
Security wasn't so tight,
Yep.
and you could talk your way through anything.
And it sounds like you did.
I did.
Yes.
I mean, look at me. I'm going to just go watch the rehearsal of the Tonight Show. You work here? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Saturday Night Live was a start. I think I'm going to go watch a rehearsal of that too. I knew where everything was. That's why your confidence level had to be high. I'd go downstairs to the radio division. I'd watch Howard Stern, and I would watch the Imus do a show, and I go. And then I remember Imus called me in the studio one day. He says, "You're here a lot watching the show." I said, "Yeah, I want to do what you do."
What about Lorne Michaels?
I never met him.
Never met him.
Never met him. The only thing, I had a friend that worked at NBC and then became friend with the president of the radio division of NBC. And it was sometime in the summer. He called me up. He says, "You want to come see a show?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "We don't have an audience. It's not packed because it's a brand new show that's going on the air, and we need a studio audience." I said, "Okay, I'll go with you." And that turned out to be the first show of the David Letterman show.
Wow.
Went to that. I was on stage with, I don't know how I got connected with Don Pardo. He was the announcer for Saturday Night Live, but he announced game shows. And somebody helped me set up where I could sit in with him on the side, not in the audience, where he would do the announcing for the game show. You know, Bill Cullen was the host of show. I don't know how it all happened, and that's what I want to do. I want to be a game show host all my life, but I did get to do the announcing for Phil Donahue.
That's awesome.
And Don Pardo had some pipes on him.
Oh, he did.
He had a great voice.
So I said, "Don, how do I become an announcer for NBC?" He said, "There's only 4 of us." I said, "Well, I want to be an announcer." Because he was sitting there reading stuff. He goes, "I guess with Bill Cullen, and today brought to you by Amana." And then it had the whole thing, and he just stood in the corner. And I remember sitting on the stool next to him. He was the kindest guy in the world.
Wow.
That's awesome. So remember out there that it's not what you're worth, it's what you can negotiate. You negotiated your way into a lot of places.
Be confident. Just be confident.
Be confident.
And it can change. See, it can change like this from the negative self-talk as a kid, straight up.
There you go. There you go. All right, if you're out there and you're listening, we want to hear your story. There's people out there that need to hear your story, and you can make a difference in someone's life. And that was an amazing ride.
Yes.
And every time you speak, I learned something new. And I enjoy your company. I enjoy your spirituality, your calmness, and your input in my life.
Thank you, Bob.
So-
I enjoy you too.
Thank you very much, Chet. That was a great, great ride.
Ivan's got the apron on.